From the WATE.com Digital Center, answering your legal questions, this is Ask Isaacs. Now, here's Lori Tucker and attorney Greg Isaacs.
Hi, everyone. Lori Tucker here along with our legal analyst, Greg Isaacs. Thanks for coming in.
Lori, it's good to be here.
We have a lot to talk about today. This has been quite a week, and it's only Wednesday.
And it's getting worse.
Yes, it seems to be. We're, of course, talking about school threats. We found out today, just from our reporter who's been covering this story, that 17 students have been arrested in Knox County over threats just this school year alone. And, gosh, about a half dozen just in the last few days. This is a big problem, and it, like you said, it's escalating.
It's escalating. You know, one of the unfortunate corollaries with school shootings is the threat of school shootings. And if you're a school system, you need to treat and have to treat these threats very seriously. Now, for example, recently the mass school shooting in Georgia, where 4 people unfortunately lost their life. That young man, 14 years old, had been investigated a few months earlier for making threats of a school shooting.
He was on the radar of police, and yet still this happened.
On their radar, but you know, and if you take a close look at that case, then he changed schools, went to another jurisdiction.
And he'd only been at that school a few days.
A few days.
Yeah.
So, you know, Knox County, Tennessee schools and our Tennessee legislature take threats of mass violence or any violence at school very seriously.
In fact, before you say anything else, we have our sheriff, Tom Spengler, who you just spoke with last night. We have him on camera talking about that very thing, taking these threats very seriously. Let's listen.
When people ask me, are you upset? You're damn right I'm upset. This is not a joke anymore. It never was a joke, but I think we have a small percentage of individuals who are making these threats. And we're not going to tolerate it. As I have said, we're going to make sure that we're going to punish you to the fullest extent. The law has changed. It's a felony now. It's a Class C felony. You make a threat of mass violence, we're coming after you. You know, and I've been speaking to our students so much. Parents, this is a notice to you as well. If you're having a problem with a child and you're knowing and you know about it and you're not letting us know about it, we're going to come after you as well.
All right, so having heard from him, Greg, let's talk about your angle. What are the laws on school threats and the potential punishments that these kids could be facing right now? And we're talking young kids.
And Lori, again, these are very serious issues, and our Tennessee legislature has made threats of mass violence at schools a mandatory zero tolerance offense. So you have 2 parallel trains. You have disciplinary action at the school, and then you have the risk or specter of criminal charges. Now let's talk about what a student can be charged with. They can be charged with felonies that range from 2 to 4 years to a C felony, as Sheriff Spangler was referencing, which is 3 to 6 years in the penitentiary.
Can they ever be tried as an adult?
Well, that's typically a case-by-case analysis, but I don't know if that's a specific enumerated transferable offense, but I do know that school officials, juvenile court officials, and prosecutors here in Knox County move very swiftly. And one thing I want to be very clear, you know, typically you see in juvenile court or in school systems to try to formulate discipline or action that is in the best interest of the child. That's the mandate. But in these cases, it's different. What you want to do is do what's in the best interest to minimize any risk to fellow students, teachers. Correct.
Yes,
and so what
of everybody else.
It can be something as innocuous as scribbling, "There's a bomb in a bathroom stall," which I've seen. It can be a cartoon character involved, and once the school officials find out, they move swiftly, and so does law enforcement and prosecutors.
One of the students reportedly stated, and we're not sharing this a lot, but I want to put it out there. When I graduate, I'm going to bring an AK-47 to graduation and shoot it up. That's one of the quotes that we got from one of the kids who was arrested. So here's the question too. All these are underage. One was 14, one was 18, but in terms of just in the past couple of days, thank you for Hope, our digital educator over here. Yes, one was 18, but the rest were really young. One's 11. So here's the question. Can these charges and these cases follow them throughout their lives because they're juveniles? Do they ever go away?
Academically, yes. Under some circumstances, we used to say that juvenile records were sealed and closed and they never
Right.
could impact you, but that's not the case as much anymore. And there's certain instances where the media can show up in juvenile court, but extraordinarily serious. But let's, at the beginning we said this was becoming an epidemic, and let's look at some of the numbers. In the last school year, the Tennessee Department of Homeland Security investigated 344 threats of mass violence at Tennessee schools. Davidson County had 42 expulsions. That was double from the year before. In 1 year, it's doubled. Chattanooga had 15 last year. We've already surpassed that here in Knox County. So, it's something that needs to be addressed. Parents, educators need to, let students know that it's not a joke, it's not funny, because in the midst of doing something that they think in a brain that's not fully matured or developed might be a prank, then you are in the middle of someone else that may be making a cry for help, like the case in Michigan, the case in Georgia. So, the school system has to do, I think, they're doing an excellent job in responding to school threats, but to educate students and parents about the severity of these threats and the severity of the response and consequences.
Right, and just yesterday, Superintendent John Reiswig held a lengthy news conference. It was very compelling. He hit every aspect of what parents were asking about and how the school system is handling this. And he said, this stuck out at me. He said, we want our kids to graduate. We want every kid to graduate. So when you talk about these kids who are facing expulsion, this may not be our area of expertise in legal terms, but they've got to be educated somewhere. So I think he was saying, we don't want to throw away these kids. They've got to get their high school diploma, but where are they going to get it? We have alternative schools, there's virtual learning, but the goal is to keep harm away.
And also socialization. When you have somebody that's, sometimes homeschooled or sent to an alternative school, then that creates an issue. But again, in a threat of mass violence at a school, the standard is flipped. Not what's in the best interest of the child, but what's in the best interest of the students, the teachers, the public at large. So, I think, and it's amazing because it's remarkable to me because in the criminal defense arena, when you have an arrest, you have a statement from Sheriff Spangler, you see SROs at school leading somebody out, you would think there would be specific and general deterrence, i.e., I just saw, Mary and Janie getting hauled off in the back of a cruiser. I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing is the opposite. It fuels school threats, and threats of violence are fueling more threats of violence.
It usually begins with a school shooting, the one in Georgia. That is what is said to have propelled these latest threats. And in that case, and in some of the other cases, as we have seen, and we have certainly talked about, parents are getting in trouble for these shootings. Are we going to take it to another step? And if these threats are made, parents can be held liable too for not keeping up with what their kids are doing.
Well, when you have a threat, then you have a red flag, and then you, as we see the law evolve to address these mass shootings and this epidemic of school threats, I think you're seeing the law and prosecutors impose a higher duty on parents that wasn't there a few years ago. So if you know that your student has made a threat of mass violence, you better make a serious effort to secure those guns, get those guns out of the house, because if, God forbid, something happens, then that's going to be a potential consequence that a parent could face down the road. based on how we're seeing the law evolve. But the main thing, you know, if parents and students can come away from this is a school, it's not violence, just the threat of violence.
The threat of violence.
The spoken, written text, the drawing has extraordinarily serious consequences under Tennessee law, and you're going to see the more this epidemic continues, the more severe the response.
And I have to give a shout out. I normally don't do this, but driving around town today, and let's show the video again, Hope, if you don't mind, there has been some sort of law enforcement presence at every school I went by today. Even at some of the public places. I saw one at the mall, at Westtown Mall. So they're out and about, and the sheriff said we're going to have presence, and Dr. Reiswick said school is safe. It's a safe place to be. We have law enforcement covering every single one.
You know, it amazes me, and we saw with the governor's special session last year on the gun reform, and we have open carry here in Tennessee. But you know what we're seeing here in response to this epidemic of threats is open safety. I mean, because parents want to. I'm having friends call me and say, "Should I send my child to school?" They're having fear. They're having trepidation. So you know what? You do have a right to open carry in Tennessee, but you also have a right to walk in your school and feel free from mass shootings, mass violence.
That's always the hope.
Always the hope.
All right, let's talk more about this at 5:30.
Let's do it.
All right, join us then. Thank you.